What's up, everybody? 40 the Broadway Saiyan here, and welcome back again to my YouTube channel, where I'm bringing you guys another video on Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Before I move forward with this video, I do want to let you guys know that my family and I are doing okay. We're currently safe. I know in the area that we live right now in Northern California in the United States, we've been dealing with the crazy wildfires that have been happening all over the area. Several areas have been affected where people have had to evacuate, including some people that we know. Currently, right now, we have an evacuation warning. So we haven't evacuated yet, but my wife and I are prepared, which is why I made that update for you guys, letting you guys know that videos and streams might be up in the air for this week, because in the event that we have to evacuate, then, you know, I obviously won't be able to do this. But currently, right now, we're safe. We heard news that the fires are being contained, and hopefully it'll stay that way. So then that way, you know, I can continue to produce videos and stream for you guys. But anyways, thank you guys for your kind words on that post that I made. Really means a lot to me that you guys are, you know, sending me nice words, you know, to make sure that I'm okay and things like that. But anyways, guys, for this video, we are going to be talking about the upcoming chapter, which is going to be chapter 10 for Act 2 in the story for Global Opera Omnia. Now, Act 2, chapter 10 is going to be featuring the debut of a brand new character, which is going to be Gabranth from Final Fantasy XII, and we're also going to be seeing the debut of the LD and burst weapons for Vaan. So we're going to be covering those. I'm also going to be touching up a little bit on the banner itself. Now, there's also going to be some synergy characters alongside Gabranth, which is going to be Vaan. Locke is on there as synergy. We also got Lena, we got Balthier, and we got Waka. I am also going to be covering the Chaos difficulty boss fight and the Chaos challenge, which is going to be featuring a new type of enemy called Avenger. Interesting name that they call them Avenger. So I'll be covering both the normal Chaos as well as the Chaos challenge, and also touch up a little bit on the co-op version of it, because there is going to be a limited time co-op again that they do for these different chapter events where the Chaos fight actually has limited time co-op. So make sure to take advantage of that, because it actually makes the Chaos a little bit easier, especially for those that haven't been playing Dissidia Opera Omnia that long. And then afterwards, we're going to be doing our Let's Play portion, where I show you guys how to play Gabranth and also Vaan. And then I'm also going to be showing you guys how the whole sphere crafting system works, because if Global is following the timeline that JP did when Act 2 Chapter 10 came out there, this is going to be the debut of that sphere crafting system, where we can essentially craft, they're essentially lower end spheres compared to the spheres that you would unlock from realizing an EX weapon. But, you know, I just want to touch up on that to give you guys an idea of how that works and things like that. So we're going to be covering all of these for this video. Again, before I start the video and cover all of these different topics, I always want to give a big thanks and shout out to Rem and the Dissidia DB for all of the lovely information from his website. Be sure to check it out in the video description, as well as the comments, the pinned comments. Also, big thanks and shout outs to Macnull and the Dissidia Info, another fantastic website and resource for Opera Omnia, as well as the Opera Omnia Tracker, which is a website you guys can use to keep track of your progress, such as through Dimensions End and things like that. Also, big thanks and shout outs to the Tonberry Troop for all of the lovely infographics they create on these characters to summarize what they do. And last but not least, the Final Fantasy TCC podcast, giving us a weekly podcast for Global Opera Omnia. Without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get started and talk about Act 2, Chapter 10, as well as Gabranth's debut and Vaan's LD and burst weapon debut. Before going over Gabranth's full kit, we're going to briefly take a look at the landscape of Act 2, Chapter 10, located at the bottom right-hand corner of Act 2. It begins with a first floor featuring boss fights against Skull Dragon, and later on, after completing all the other stages, against the Avenger-type monsters. Followed by the first floor, the player will traverse through a 4-floor tower combating against bosses such as the Jeweled Turtle, Gizamaluk, Were-Tiger, and Phoenix. The final portion of the story pits the player against the Hellworm boss accompanied by a Maria mannequin. This will be one of the longer chapters within Act 2. Gabranth from Final Fantasy XII enters the world of Opera Omnia as an offensive debuffer, specializing in powerful debuffs triggering after being attacked and having the ability to re-break enemy targets. Gabranth possesses several unique debuffs and buffs within his kit. His first unique buff, called Judge Magister, has a 6-turn duration that increases the party's max brave and attack and lowers the amount of brave damage the party receives, and will automatically inflict Mark of Guilt and Judge's Sentence on the enemy for 6 turns whenever the party takes brave or HP damage. While this unique buff is active, Gabranth will gain access to his Brave Attack ++, which is a 3-hit, non-elemental melee single-target Brave Attack that inflicts attack down and defense down for 6 turns if the enemy target is afflicted with either Mark of Guilt or Felon's Imprint. He also gains access to his HP Attack ++, which is a 3-hit, non-elemental melee, single-target Brave plus single-target HP attack with a 120% Brave overflow, and inflicts attack down and defense down on the enemy target if they are afflicted with either Mark of Guilt or Felon's Imprint. His unique debuff Mark of Guilt lowers enemy attack, deals brave damage to the enemy after their turn, and changes into Felon's Imprint if the targeted enemy has 4 or more debuffs active. Felon's Imprint lowers enemy attack at a greater potency, deals brave damage to the enemy after their turn at a greater potency, and increases their HP damage received. It will revert back to Mark of Guilt if they are afflicted with less than 4 debuffs. Gabranth's final unique debuff is called Judge's Sentence, which lowers enemy max brave. Gabranth's C65 ability is called Protect All, which has 2 total uses, increases his own attack when attacking a debuff target, and reduces the amount of HP damage the party receives for 3 turns. His most noteworthy passives are his C50 passive, Keeper of the Law, which increases his own initial max brave, attack, and defense while an enemy is inflicted with either Mark of Guilt or Felon's Imprint, his C54 passive, which increases his own max brave and speed while buffed, his C58 passive, which increases his own max brave and attack while buffed, and his C68 passive, which permanently increases his own attack. On to his skills. Gabranth's skill 1 is called Circle of Judgment, which has 7 total uses. Circle of Judgment delivers a 4-hit, non-elemental melee, AoE brave plus single target HP attack with increased brave damage against a single target, 180% brave overflow, and grants Judge's Magister for 6 turns. If the enemy has Mark of Guilt or Felon's Imprint active, Gabranth will inflict attack and defense down on enemies for 6 turns. Gabranth's skill 2 is called Execution, which has 8 total uses. Execution recovers his own brave based on max brave and then delivers a 6-hit non-elemental melee single target brave plus single target HP attack with a 180% brave overflow and 20% HP splash damage. If the enemy target was inflicted with Felon's Imprint, Execution will cancel the break status and break the target and also deal 50% HP splash damage. Moving to his EX weapon, before its realization and at full limit break, Gabranth gains access to his EX ability Quickening, which has a normal recast speed. Quickening delivers a 4-hit, non-elemental melee single-target brave plus single-target HP attack executed 3 times with 20% HP splash damage on the final HP attack and grants Judge Magister for 6 turns. If the enemy target was inflicted with Felon's Imprint, Quickening will cancel the break status, break the target, and will deal 50% HP splash damage on the final HP attack instead. Upon realizing this EX weapon, Gabranth gains the following upgrades. 0 out of 3 improves Quickening with a higher Brave potency and an added 120% Brave overflow. 1 out of 3 permanently increases his own max brave and attack. 2 out of 3 allows Gabranth to start the quest with Judge Magister for 6 turns, and at the start of each wave will automatically inflict Mark of Guilt and Judge's Sentence on enemies for 6 turns. Finally, 3 out of 3 further improves Quickening, increasing the number of Brave hits to 3, increase Brave potency, increase Brave overflow, and allows Gabranth to recover his own Brave based on the HP damage he deals after the first and second HP attack. The B-type sphere unlocked from this EX weapon is called Critical Resist All Short, which lowers the party's Brave damage taken by 10% for 3 turns when dealing a critical hit. Recommended artifact passes for Gabranth are 3 copies of Attack plus 108 and either Max Brave plus 330 or Keeper of the Law boost 2-star. Vaan receives access to his LD and burst weapons upon the release of Act 2 Chapter 10. At full limit break, Vaan's LD weapon permanently increases his attack by 60% and equips him with the LD ability called Earthen Eruption with 3 total uses. Earthen Eruption delivers an 8-hit non-elemental magic AoE Brave plus AoE HP attack with a 200% Brave overflow, split HP damage, and grants him a unique buff called Quickening Cartridge for 3 turns that grants him free skill uses for his Skill 1, Skill 2, and C65 ability. His burst weapon grants him access to the finish burst called Calamitous Orb, which is a 12-hit non-elemental magic single-target Brave plus single-target HP attack with a 150% increased Brave damage limit and a 200% increased HP damage limit. It grants a party-wide burst effect for 4 turns that allows a party member's Brave to not drop below 20% of max Brave. If it's already below 20%, it will not decrease further. Recommended artifact passes for Vaan post his LD and burst release are 3 copies of Attack plus 108 and 3 copies of Max Brave plus 330. Alright guys, so now that we've gone ahead and taken a look at what Gabranth and Vaan bring to the table with their kits, what are my overall thoughts about these characters? Let's take a look at Gabranth first. This character, for a character that is being only released with an EX Plus weapon being at its highest weapon stage for him, is quite loaded. His debuffs are actually really strong, and I do like the whole mechanic with his kit where whenever your party takes damage, whether it be just a single party member or your entire party, he's going to fire some really powerful debuffs right back. And if he has 4 or more debuffs inflicted, or if there are more than 4 or more debuffs inflicted on the target, Gabranth will have access to Felon's Imprint debuff being active on the enemy targets, which means that not only are the enemies further crippled, but he's also going to gain access to his Brave and HP attack ++'s additional effects, as well as the better version of his skill 2, and as well as the better effect of his EX ability. So very powerful debuffs. And then let's not forget, he also allows the party to be able to be a lot more survivable. So coming from his Judge Magister buff, he grants the party a Brave damage reduction, and then afterwards his C65 ability also grants your party HP damage reduction. So not only is he allowing your party to survive longer, but he is also crippling enemies at the same time. So again, for a character that only goes all the way up until an EX Plus at this moment, he is an extremely strong character, and for me personally, I think he's the prize for this banner over Vaan, but that's just me, because for a character that is going to be much easier to pull for, because he only goes up to EX Plus, he just brings so much with his kit. Now let's go ahead and talk about Vaan. So one of Vaan's struggles before he got his LD and his burst weapon was his longevity, because you would find yourselves, spamming his skill 2 or his skill 1, and then you had to essentially use, his skill 1 and his skill 2 once in order to gain access to the better versions of it, and also gain access to that blind debuff. And then afterwards, you would find yourself kind of stuck with him, because if you're going to be spamming skills, he's going to eventually run out of steam. So one of the biggest values that this character gets is definitely coming from that LD weapon, because it vastly improves his longevity and also his damage capabilities, because not only does he have another powerful ability, but he gets access to that really powerful buff where he gains 3 free uses of his skill 1, skill 2, and C65. And pretty much with Vaan, what you want to do is you're going to use the LD and then you're going to go right into his skill 2, because his skill 2 is the ability or skill that is much more potent, especially because it has that blind debuff, which can really come in handy if you find yourself in a pinch. So that LD weapon alone brings Vaan up to the table as being a more consistent damage dealer and having that better longevity. Now, as far as his burst weapon goes, I'm going to tell you right now, for a single target damage dealing burst weapon, it actually deals a large amount of damage. It's probably one of the highest that I've seen as far as single target damage, because remember, there is no splash damage or split damage that it does. It's all going to be directed to one enemy. So you're going to be seeing numbers like 300,000 with Vaan alone coming from that damage he deals with his finished burst. And then let's not forget, he has that pretty cool burst effect where essentially for 4 turns, anytime your party members dump their Brave to deal HP damage, their Brave is not going to fall below 20%, and if it does, it's not going to fall any further than that. So that can come really handy, especially when you're trying to really push the aggression. So then that way you don't really have to worry about being broken the next turn or potentially being broken, because you have that nice burst effect from Vaan. So overall, it's a very, very cool burst weapon. However, just keep in mind that it is single target damage. Now that we've covered that, what are my thoughts about this banner? So the value you're going to get out of this banner, specifically coming from Gabranth and coming from Vaan, is with Gabranth, you're going to be getting a very loaded character, coming with powerful debuffs, having a really cool mechanic of inflicting debuffs after taking damage, and also increasing the potency of his debuffs with his Felon's Imprint when you have 4 or more debuffs active. And he also has a support utility of being able to allow your party members to survive longer with a Brave damage reduction as well as the HP damage reduction. So Gabranth brings a lot of value as far as this banner goes. Now, in terms of Vaan, you're going to be getting a really powerful elemental damage dealer. He could synergize fairly well with specific characters, such as, for example, Shentoto can really help Vaan dish out even more damage because of her Omni Imperil, and Vaan has access to several different elements. Now, if you ask me personally, if you were to pull on this banner, the LD is more than enough. I would personally wait for the burst. Now, especially if you're going to be pulling on the other banners that's going to be featuring Vaan's burst, which is going to be Machina's Lost Chapters banner, as well as the Beatback banner that features Leon's EX weapon, Arciela, and Vivi. If you plan on pulling for those, then for the 2 banners that are coming out, I would try to really only go for Vaan's LD weapon if you find value in a character that's going to be getting, plenty of free skill uses from here on out coming from that LD effect. So that is going to be the value that the banners bring to you. Now, in terms of which banner to pull on, there's going to be 2. There's going to be one banner that's going to have Vaan's full kit, and it's also going to have Gabranth, and it's going to have Balthier. So it's going to be a Final Fantasy XII themed banner. And then there's going to be the other banner that's going to be featuring Lena, Locke, and Waka. Now, as far as that second banner goes, Lena is still a pretty decent support unit. She has really powerful regens with her HP regens and her Brave regen. She has that debuff immunity. She's still a pretty solid character. While she has been surpassed by some other support units that we've seen recently, she can still hold her own, especially if you decide to EX realize her. Now, as far as Locke goes, I'm going to say he's probably the decent one of the bunch. He could still provide a little bit of healing there, a little bit of battery there. He has that nifty little mechanic where, he changes whatever unique buff that he has active because, he's a thief, and, he pretty much changes the properties of his Brave and HP attack. So he could be a nice filler character if you're looking for a character that, has a mechanic like that. And then afterwards, there's Waka, who has access to the blind debuff. He recently got his EX weapon in a Ultimate Trial, so now this is your chance to get his EX weapon if you didn't get a chance to get it there. So he's still a pretty solid character, but I would say that between the 2 banners, I find a little bit more value in the banner with Gabranth, because he is just such a loaded character for an EX plus character only, and I feel like that character alone brings a lot of value because he's going to be a little bit easier to build and a little bit easier to pull for because he only goes up to EX plus. Now, if you don't plan on pulling for Vaan at all, for Vaan's LD and burst, but you still want Gabranth, what you can do is, if you already redeemed the Mog Pass, and let's say you were able to farm up some of the daily tokens in exchange for some of those, EX token coins, you could just buy Gabranth's weapon right from there, his EX weapon, and then just be done with a banner. Because honestly, the character itself is pretty strong, and he is, like I said, he's just quite a loaded character. Coming into the game with only an EX plus. So you could just do that and then be done with a banner, especially if you plan on pulling for the next 2 banners. But if you really, really, really want to chase Vaan's gear, my advice is to personally just go for the LD weapon first and then see what happens with the next 2 banners coming out, especially because we know we're going to be seeing some other burst weapons that, for me personally, take more precedence over Vaan, compared, especially if we take a look at characters like Noctis. We got characters coming out later on like Lightning, who's exceptional, Arden, who's crazy strong. So take a look at your resources, ask yourself if this banner brings any value to you, and then just kind of go from there. So hopefully I came across okay as far as these banners go. All right guys, so now what we're gonna go ahead and do is take a look at that Chaos difficulty boss fight, as well as the Chaos challenge for this upcoming Act 2 Chapter 10 story events. Let's go ahead and move forward to that. The Chaos difficulty boss fight for Act 2 Chapter 10 features a pair of new monsters called Avenger. There will be 2 waves for both the normal Chaos fight and the Chaos challenge. Wave 1 will be against the 3 Hollow Rider bosses. The most significant things to look out for are their debuff immunity at certain HP thresholds and their ability to deliver an AoE HP attack. They can also lower your party members' max HP with a debuff. Wave 2 features the pair of Avenger bosses who are weak to the water element, absorb thunder, earth, and dark elements, and are immune to the provoked debuff. They have a very powerful unique debuff they will inflict on party members that lasts for 4 turns and bypass debuff evasion and immunity. This debuff allows them to counterattack a party member every time they take an action, regardless if damage was dealt or not, except during a summoner burst phase. They also have a very powerful recast ability that dispels all non-unique buffs, cleanses inflicted non-unique debuffs, delivers a powerful AoE Brave and HP attack, and if they break a party member, will gain a powerful HP regen. For the non-challenge version, it is recommended to take a powerful healer and as well as a character who can mitigate HP damage such as Porum, Kimari, Bosch, Hope, or Gabranth. One way to potentially cheese the debuff the Avenger boss inflicts is to take Yuffie and redirect it back at them with her skill 2. Yuffie can also steal the Avenger's HP regen buff as well. A Mid-Italian is exceptional for the non-challenge version as they can delete turns and also lower their stats with the frame debuffs they inflict. Characters who can delay can also work well for this particular fight. Lastly, characters with access to HP attack silence such as Kefka and Arciela, and Eldnarsh with his terror debuff and warp can really help shut down the powerful abilities the Avenger bosses utilize. Remember that there will be a time-limited co-op for this Chaos to give players an easier experience to handle this Chaos fight. Remember that in co-ops, every player can use not only their summon, but also use their full burst, which helps tremendously. The Chaos challenge for this fight is going to be much more difficult as it will be dependent on who you have built from the synergy characters. Lena or Locke will be your only options for healers for this fight, and between the two, Lena will be much more recommended despite the fact that her debuff immunity is bypassed as her support level is more consistent compared to Locke's. Balthier can be a solid option for stealing the HP regen buff the pair of Avengers grant themselves after their recast ability. Gabranth's ability to inflict debuffs after damage is taken together with his ability to re-break targets make him an extremely valuable option if you want to tackle this challenge. Lastly, if you manage to pull even just Vaan's LD weapon, his free skill uses off of the unique buff he gains from it will prolong his longevity and will allow him to freely spam his skill 2, which has the blind debuff. Both Vaan and Wakka's blind debuff can come in handy against the counterattacks the Avenger bosses utilize. If you bring Gabranth, be sure to time his C65 to reduce the incoming HP damage, as it will save your party from a potential wipe. Should you choose to not bring Gabranth for this challenge, it is advisable to play more conservatively and keep your character's Brave topped off when dealing with the Avenger boss's powerful recast ability. Alright guys, here we are with the last portion of the video, the Let's Play or How to Play for Vaan and Gabranth. But before I do that, I do want to quickly go over the Sphere Refining System as well as the Reset Stones. So the Sphere Refining System, essentially, you earn the tokens by doing specific co-ops. Now to my understanding, not every co-op is going to have the Sphere Refining System, being able to earn the tokens, I mean. I believe they're only available for Heretics, Raids, Ultimate Summon Trials, and I think Beatback Challenges and Story Events. But character events are not a part of that, although I could be wrong on that. I would have to double check, but they're not available in every single co-op, so you just want to keep that in mind. But however, to do the Sphere Refining System, you simply just go right over here to this little icon right here. And remember, the spheres that are going to be featured for the sphere refining are going to be based on whoever is synergy for the corresponding event. So for example, if I long click this one is for Kuja, because Kuja is currently a synergy character for the Heretic event that is out right now in JP. So if I wanted to buy the sphere for Kuja, or the Kuja representative sphere, I would need 50 of the tokens, and as well as 200 of the tier 4 and 100 of the tier 5 red shards. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So if you guys have been farming up these shards, good on you, because you guys will definitely be ready, you know, for the Sphere Refining System when it hits global. And all you got to do is do those co-ops, so then that way you can earn the tokens. But that's essentially in a nutshell of how this works. Now, as far as the Sphere Reset Stones, we're going to go ahead and do that here. So let's go ahead and go to a character that I could reset. Let's go to Squall, for example. So if I go to my Squall right here, let's say I want to remove his stone without destroying it. So all you got to do is simply click there. You want to go to Sphere Refinement. Now I have a ton of these because I will be honest, like you guys know, I've whaled on my JP account. So I did buy the packs that contain these, and I know Global is going to be getting 3 of them for free. But then afterwards, they are going to be available in the weapon enhancement chest. So you just want to keep that in mind. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and do that right here. All right, so now I got the sphere back. So just to confirm, we're going to go ahead and scroll through here and find the Squall sphere. There it is. All right. So as we can see right there, the sphere is still within my inventory because I used the reset stone to safely remove it without actually destroying it. And just for the purposes of the video, let's just go ahead and give that back to Squall. But, you know, hopefully that explains that system for you guys as far as the sphere refinement and the reset stone. So now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do that Let's Play for both Gabranth and also for Vaan. I'm going to tell you right now, both of these characters, compared to some of the other characters we've seen recently, they're still a bit more straightforward. Between the two, I would say Gabranth is the one that's a little bit more, not necessarily difficult, but you got to pay attention to a little bit more because of the way that his debuffs function, you know, and also making sure that there's 4 or more debuffs active. But we're going to go into a Lost Chapters here, and I'm going to select a Chaos stage that we can do for this demonstration. Okay, let's go to Vaan. Apologize for the long load time. Sometimes JP does take a little bit longer to connect compared to Global for me. All right, here we go. So we're going to jump into this one. We're not going to take a friend because we're not going to go through the entire stage. I just want to show you guys how these characters work with their kits. And something to note is that I know you guys are going to notice that my Gabranth is at level 80. He has 4 character boards. And in JP, Gabranth did get a minor rework to his skill 1. So his skill 1 gains 2 additional uses, and he also brave refunds the entire party based on the HP damage that he deals. And so he also has access to his LD weapon, so I'm going to avoid using that for this demo because Global is not going to get that. All right, and I don't know why this is taking so long to load. There we go. Okay, so wow, that took forever. Again, my apologies on that. My Wi-Fi is great. It's just sometimes, you know, sometimes JP just takes longer to load. Okay, so anyways, we're going to go ahead and jump right into here. Okay, so with Gabranth, you generally, if you're going to be purpling his full kit, you generally want to start off with skill 1 first, which is going to be Circle of Judgment, because what that does is he's going to be inflicting 2 more debuffs. So then that way you're going to fulfill that 4 or more debuffs on a target. So then he's going to gain access to the better versions of his Brave, HP Attack ++, his skill 2, and his EX. And that comes all from the Felon's Imprint debuff, because originally it would be Mark of Guilt, but then if there's 4 or more debuffs, it's going to change into Felon's Imprint, which further cripples the enemy. So we're going to go ahead and start off with skill 1 so we get those 4 debuffs. And then with Vaan, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to use his LD. His LD gives him that nice, unique buff that lasts for 3 turns, and now he could have free skill uses with his skill 1, skill 2, and his C65, but because we know that his skill 2 is the more desirable skill since it has that blind debuff, we're going to go ahead and just spam that. Okay. All right, so next turn, we notice that we have the 4 debuffs now, and as you can see, after we took damage, you saw that those 2 debuffs trigger. That's pretty much Gabranth's whole mechanic. Anytime your party gets attacked, he's gonna throw some really powerful debuffs right back at the enemy. So we're gonna go ahead and use his execution now. And since we have Felon's Imprint, what it normally does is that it auto breaks the target. So even if they're broken, they're going to get rebroken. And then if there are other enemies present, they're going to take 50% HP splash damage versus the normal 20% that skill 2 usually does. So with Vaan, we're going to go ahead and use skill 2 again. And it's completely free because we have that unique buff. And then afterwards with Gabranth, let's just go ahead and take a look at his skill 2 again so we can see the rebreak. All right, so as you can see, we rebroke, which can be really, really useful because it could be seen as like a pseudo delay, which makes Gabranth a really, really strong character. Like I said, his kit is extremely loaded for being a character that Global is going to get sued that only has access up to an EX weapon. So now we have access to Gabranth's EX ability, and remember, because we have Felon's Imprint active, since we have 4 or more debuffs, we're going to get the rebreak option as well. So as you can see, we're going to rebreak the target, and this EX like hits really hard. This EX hits like a truck. Boom. All right, and then to finish off this demo, let's just go ahead and use Vaan's burst. Here we go. Okay, so when you go into his burst, generally what you're going to want to do is go right into LD and then you spam the heck out of skill 2. Unless they obviously, like, resist the elements or, they resist something Vaan does, you essentially just want to do that. I find that even if there are multiple enemies, I really don't find myself using the EX. Now, I know there could be some other players out there that you might have seen them use the EX. That's perfectly fine. But for me, I just find so much more value in getting that blind debuff off, even if there's multiple enemies, and he just does so much damage. Now you could argue that, let's say, if there's 2 or more enemies present, you can get the blind debuff off on all of them, and then afterwards use the EX so you could deal damage to both of them. So you could do that theoretically, which is a decent option as well. But generally, you want to spam his skill 2 during his burst after using the LD, and then afterwards you're gonna see massive amount of single target damage right over here. Like I said when I was talking about this burst weapon. As you can see right there, 300,000 damage. It's single target only, but it's 300,000 damage, which is insane, for single target damage. But that is pretty much going to be it for this Let's Play How to Play. Both of the characters are pretty straightforward. Just remember, with Gabranth, if you're going to be using him, always make sure that there's going to be 4 debuffs or more active on the targets, because he will have the Felon's Imprint active on enemies, which means he has access to the better versions of his abilities. All right, guys, well, this is going to be it for the Let's Play or How to Play. Thank you guys again for watching. Thank you for all the support. Stay tuned for the next video, and mahal, guys.